There are certain things in life that aren't meant to be shared with everyone. The truth is, the older we get, the more we realize that some of our peace, our dignity, and our wisdom depend on what we choose to keep private. Protecting your personal boundaries builds respect because boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are guidelines that show others how to treat you, and when you learn to put them in place, you send a clear message about what is acceptable and what is not. And this is not about pushing people away or creating distance, but about valuing yourself enough to say, here is where I stand and here is what I will allow into my space. And the truth is, when you don't set boundaries, you allow others to step into your peace, take from your energy, and shape your life in ways that you did not give permission for. So creating boundaries is not selfish. It is essential for your own growth and your own balance. When you consistently protect your boundaries, you build a sense of respect that others cannot ignore, because people may not always agree with them, but they will begin to recognize that you are someone who knows your worth. And when you show up with that kind of confidence, you teach others to treat you with the same level of seriousness that you treat yourself. And this is where respect begins to grow, not in demanding it from others, but in quietly showing that you respect yourself enough to enforce it, and people eventually adjust their behavior because they understand that you cannot be manipulated, pushed, or taken advantage of in the same way they may have tried before. Boundaries are not just about keeping negative people away. They are about making sure that even the people you love and care about do not cross lines that make you feel unseen or unheard. And many times, it is not strangers who test your boundaries, but those closest to you. And this is where the challenge truly lies, because it is not easy to say no to a family member. It is not easy to stop giving in to a friend. And it is not easy to tell someone you care about that they cannot continue to do something that hurts you. But the reality is, if you do not do this, you allow resentment to build silently within you. And that resentment will damage the very relationships you are trying to protect. Protecting your boundaries also helps you filter who belongs in your life and who does not. Because when you stand firm on your values and your standards, some people will naturally walk away, and that can feel painful at first, but it is actually a gift, because those who leave were never truly aligned with you in the first place, and what you are left with are the relationships that respect your time, your voice, and your presence. And these are the relationships that add to your life instead of draining from it. So boundaries are not just lines, they are filters that help you separate what is toxic from what is healthy. The older you get, the more you realize that peace is priceless and that you cannot afford to let everyone and everything into your world. And boundaries are the tool that allows you to protect that peace. And when you create that level of clarity, you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you stop defending decisions that are meant to protect your well-being, and you stop carrying guilt for putting yourself first, because you begin to understand that when you are not healthy mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, you have nothing real to give to anyone else. So protecting your boundaries is also protecting your ability to show up as the best version of yourself. Another reason boundaries build respect is because they create structure in your interactions. People begin to understand that your time is valuable, that your attention is valuable, and that your energy is valuable. And this changes the way they approach you, because they realize they cannot simply take without giving. They cannot demand without regard for your needs. And they cannot keep pushing when you've already made your limits clear. And over time, this structure becomes the foundation of trust, because others see that you are consistent, you are firm, and you are not easily swayed. And people trust those who live by standards more than those who bend under pressure. When you protect your boundaries, you are not only teaching others how to treat you, you are teaching yourself how to treat you. Because every time you stand firm, you remind yourself that your feelings matter, your needs matter, and your life matters. And this creates a deeper level of self-respect that no one can take away. And when you carry that within you, it shows up in the way you speak, in the way you carry yourself, and in the way you respond to challenges, because your boundaries are not just a defense. They are a reflection of your strength and your self-worth. And the more you practice protecting them, the more natural it becomes to live with that kind of clarity and confidence. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerabilities, because the truth is your struggles, your fears, and your insecurities are not meant for every ear that is willing to listen. And the mistake so many people make is believing that openness is always a sign of strength, when in reality, strength is knowing when and with whom to share what is most fragile inside you. And the older you become, the more you realize that some people do not come into your life to support you, but to collect information. And once they know your weak spots, they have the power to use it against you, whether in subtle ways through judgment and gossip, or in direct ways that try to shake your confidence and self-worth. There are people who may smile in your face and seem to care when you are pouring out your heart, but behind the scenes, they take that information and pass it around like a story to tell. And when that happens, you are left not only with the pain of your struggle, but the betrayal of your trust. And that is why protecting your vulnerabilities is not about being secretive or cold, but about choosing wisely who earns the right to know your deeper truths. Because access to your heart is not a right, it is a privilege. And giving it to just anyone is like handing over the keys to your home and expecting them not to cross the line. Not everyone has the emotional capacity to handle what you are going through, and some people are so wrapped up in their own negativity or immaturity that when you share your struggles with them, it becomes more about their response than your healing. They dismiss it, they minimize it, or they compare it to their own situation without really being there for you. And instead of feeling supported, you walk away feeling misunderstood. So guarding your vulnerabilities is also about recognizing who has shown the ability to listen, to respect, and to hold space without turning it into something about themselves. There are also people who use your openness as leverage. And this is the most damaging kind, because when they know your fears, they can push those buttons whenever they want to control or manipulate you. And this can happen in friendships, in family, and even in relationships, where something you revealed in trust later gets thrown back at you in anger or used as a way to make you feel small. And these experiences are reminders that not everyone is safe, not everyone is loyal, and not everyone has the integrity to handle the weight of your heart. So it becomes your responsibility to choose carefully instead of carelessly. Keeping your vulnerabilities safe does not mean you carry your struggles alone. It means you save them for the right people, the ones who have proven through actions, not words, that they value you, that they will not repeat your truths for their own entertainment, and that they can stand beside you without judgment. And those people are rare, but they exist. And when you find them, you realize that it is better to have 2 or 3 trusted souls in your corner than a crowd of people who know your business but care nothing about your well-being, because healing happens faster when the environment is safe. Another reality is that some people are not even intentionally harmful, but they simply lack the maturity to protect what you share. They may not mean to hurt you, but they let their carelessness cause damage. They overshare what you told them in confidence, or they joke about it without realizing the pain it brings. And this is why protecting your vulnerabilities requires discernment, because it is not always about who is good or bad, but about who is capable and incapable. And learning to see that difference is a sign of growth that keeps you from repeating the same mistakes with the wrong people. The more you protect your vulnerabilities, the stronger you become on the inside, because you are no longer seeking validation from everyone. You are no longer handing your peace to anyone who asks, and you begin to stand firmer in your own worth, knowing that what you choose to keep private is not a weakness, but a strength. And when you operate with that kind of mindset, you stop bleeding in front of people who would rather watch you fall than help you rise. You stop opening doors to people who never had good intentions, and you start living with a sense of power and clarity that comes from knowing not everyone deserves access to your heart. Privacy preserves peace of mind, because the moment you start giving everyone access to every detail of your life, You invite their opinions, their judgments, and their energy into spaces that were never meant for them. And peace cannot exist when too many voices are pulling you in too many directions. So the ability to keep parts of your life private becomes an act of self-preservation, a way to protect the calm you have built within yourself. And it is not about hiding out of fear, but about knowing that not everything needs to be explained, not everything needs to be defended, and not everything needs to be shared just because someone is curious enough to ask. When you embrace privacy, you create a boundary between yourself and the noise of the world. And in that boundary is where your mind finds rest. Because without it, you would constantly be reacting to what people think about your choices, constantly trying to justify decisions that belong to you, and constantly weighing your worth against the standards of others. And this kind of life keeps you restless and unsettled. But when you choose to preserve privacy, you cut off that cycle and remind yourself that peace of mind is not about controlling what others say, but about controlling what you allow them to know. And the less they know, the less power they have to disturb your inner balance. Privacy also protects you from the exhaustion that comes with oversharing, because every time you expose your personal life, you open the door for commentary. And even if some of it is well-meaning, it still takes energy to process, to respond, and to carry the weight of those extra voices. And over time, this drains your emotional reserves without you realizing it. So what feels like harmless openness slowly becomes a source of fatigue. And this is why keeping things private is not coldness, but wisdom. It is choosing to hold on to your energy and use it where it matters most, rather than spending it on the reactions of people who may not even care beyond their curiosity. There is also a sense of power that comes with privacy, because when people cannot predict your every move or know your every thought, they cannot interfere with it. And this allows you to make decisions from a place of strength instead of pressure, because you are no longer seeking approval before you act. You are no longer giving others the chance to discourage you, and you are no longer waiting for validation before you move forward. And that quiet independence becomes a shield for your peace of mind, because you are living life on your own terms rather than trying to live it through the eyes of others. Privacy is not about being distant. It is about being intentional, because there are areas of your life that are sacred and deserve protection from the constant opinions of the outside world. And when you learn to separate what is sacred from what is public, you naturally create more space for peace to grow, because the sacred things are no longer subject to judgment, comparison, or intrusion. And this protects your happiness in ways that openness never could. So what many see as secrecy is actually a deeper form of self-respect, because you know the value of your inner world and you are not willing to let anyone disturb it. When you preserve privacy, you also protect your relationships, because too much exposure can invite unnecessary conflict, outsiders forming opinions about dynamics they do not understand, people stirring drama where none exists, and the intrusion of outside perspectives that distort the reality of your connection. And this can turn something meaningful into something complicated. But when you keep your private life protected, you allow your relationships to breathe without interference. And that freedom becomes the foundation of peace, because you and those you care about are no longer living under the spotlight of constant judgment and gossip. The peace that privacy brings is often underestimated until you experience it, because it is in those quiet moments where you know your life is not a stage for others to pick apart that you feel a calmness settle in. And that calmness gives you clarity, it gives you strength, and it gives you freedom. And you realize that your life does not need to be broadcasted to be meaningful. Your happiness does not need to be validated to be real, and your struggles do not need to be public to be overcome. Because privacy is not about isolation, it is about preservation. And in that preservation, you discover the kind of peace that no one else can give and no one else can take away. Strength often comes from what you withhold, not what you reveal, because there is a discipline in keeping certain things to yourself. A discipline that shows you have control over your emotions, your impulses, and your reactions. And while the world often tells you to speak out, to defend yourself, or to prove your point, True strength is found in knowing when silence or restraint is more powerful, because every time you choose not to react in anger, not to overshare your struggles, and not to give away your every thought, you are showing a level of mastery that only comes with maturity and self-awareness, and that control keeps you from being pulled into battles that are not worth fighting. When you learn to withhold certain things, you are not being weak. You are being intentional, because not everyone deserves to know your plans. Not everyone deserves to hear your struggles, and not everyone deserves access to your emotions. And the ability to keep those things guarded is a reflection of your strength, because it is easy to let frustration spill out. It is easy to share everything when you feel pressured, and it is easy to let others provoke you into exposing yourself. But it takes strength to stay steady, to stay measured, and to only reveal what serves you instead of what drains you. Withholding also protects you from regret, because words once spoken cannot be taken back, and secrets once shared cannot be unshared. And many people learn too late that reacting quickly or revealing too much creates consequences they did not anticipate. Whether it is trust that is broken, opportunities that are lost, or respect that is damaged. And this is why strength often lies in the pause, the ability to breathe before speaking, to think before revealing, and to consider before acting. Because in that pause, you protect your future from the weight of unnecessary mistakes, and you preserve your dignity when others try to take it away. There is also strength in withholding from negativity, because when someone tries to provoke you with insults or disrespect, giving them a reaction only fuels their power, but withholding your response takes it away. And this does not mean you tolerate bad behavior. It means you do not waste your energy on people who are only looking for a reaction. And the strength it takes to walk away, to remain calm, or to respond with control instead of anger is greater than the strength it takes to fight back, because one protects your peace while the other sacrifices it for a temporary sense of winning. Withholding does not mean suppressing your truth. It means choosing wisely where and when to share it. And this choice separates those who act with wisdom from those who act on impulse, because wisdom understands that timing matters, audience matters, and context matters. And what may feel urgent in the moment may not be worth exposing at all once emotions settle. So strength is not silence for the sake of silence. It is silence for the sake of strategy, and the ability to recognize that not every feeling deserves an audience and not every thought deserves a response. Another layer of strength in withholding comes from the self-respect it builds, because every time you refuse to overshare, to overreact, or to over-explain, you are reminding yourself that you are in control of your story, and that control becomes empowering. It reinforces that you do not owe the world access to every part of you, and that your value is not determined by how much of yourself you give away. So you start moving through life with a deeper confidence, knowing that what you withhold is not a loss, but a form of power, because you are no longer leaking your energy into places where it is wasted. Strength in withholding ultimately comes down to choice, the choice to rise above instead of sink down, the choice to stay grounded instead of scattered, and the choice to remain private instead of exposed. And when you consistently practice this, you realize that your silence speaks louder than your words ever could. Your restraint holds more weight than your reaction, and your ability to hold back gives you an inner calm that no one can easily shake, because what you withhold becomes your shield, your strength, and your reminder that not everything needs to be revealed to prove who you are. Silence can be the most powerful response, because when you refuse to give energy to something that does not deserve it, you maintain control, and control is where real strength lives, because arguments often grow louder, not because of the truth being spoken, but because of the noise created by unnecessary words, and silence becomes the tool that breaks that cycle. It removes the fuel from the fire, and it leaves the other person with nothing to push against, because sometimes the greatest impact you can make is not in what you say, but in what you refuse to say. Choosing silence does not mean weakness. It means discipline, because anyone can lash out, anyone can speak in anger, and anyone can spill words they later regret. But it takes self-mastery to remain quiet when provoked, and in that quietness, you are sending a louder message than words ever could. You are showing that you cannot be baited into losing your composure. You cannot be dragged into battles that are beneath you, and you cannot be forced to explain yourself to people who have no intention of understanding you, because silence in those moments is not avoidance, it is wisdom. There are times when silence is not just a shield, but also a teacher, because when you do not respond, you allow people to sit with their own words and their own behavior. And in that space of silence, they are confronted with themselves instead of distracted by your reaction. And many times that silence becomes the mirror that forces reflection, because without your defense or your explanation, they are left with their own conscience. And silence in that way becomes a lesson that words could never teach, because you cannot argue with silence and you cannot twist silence to your advantage. Silence is also powerful because it keeps you from overexposing your emotions, because in heated moments, it is easy to give away your peace by speaking too quickly, saying too much, or revealing more than you intended, and once those words are out, they cannot be taken back. But silence protects you from that loss. It creates space for you to think, to breathe, and to regain clarity. And in that space, you are able to respond later with strength rather than react in the moment with weakness, because silence is not the absence of response, it is the presence of control. When you practice silence, you also protect your energy, because every reaction requires energy and not every situation deserves that investment. And when you learn to stay quiet, you are saving your strength for what truly matters instead of wasting it on what does not. And that conservation of energy allows you to remain steady, calm, and focused in a world that constantly tries to provoke and distract you, because silence is not emptiness. It is intentional rest. And that rest gives you the ability to stay centered when everything around you is pulling for your attention. Silence has the ability to command respect, because people begin to realize that you do not give away your words cheaply, and that when you do choose to speak, it carries weight, because silence creates contrast, and contrast creates impact, and the fewer words you use, the more powerful they become. So instead of being someone whose voice gets lost in endless noise, you become someone whose presence is felt even in quiet, because silence draws attention, it demands curiosity, and it reminds others that you are not someone who can be easily read or easily swayed. The more you embrace silence, the more you realize it is not about retreating from the world, but about standing stronger in it. Because silence is not running away from conflict, it is rising above it. It is not ignoring your power, it is channeling it in a different way. And the more you choose silence in the moments that try to shake you, the more you discover that it is not always the words that win battles, but the restraint to hold them back. Because silence can disarm, it can protect, and it can elevate. And in the end, it becomes one of the strongest responses you will ever have.